Hi, my name is Catherine Carpenter, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Syrian refugee crisis. The Syrian refugee crisis is one that's very near and dear to my heart because I grew up in the Middle East with parents who were missionaries to Syrian refugees. As a result, a lot of my friends from my childhood were Syrians or kids from neighboring countries. And so the Syrian refugee crisis is affecting those I love in a very, very real way. When the Syrian refugee crisis first began in 2011, it was covered on every news outlet every single day. We saw pictures and numbers every day. Nobody could forget it. However, since this time, we've stopped hearing things. And I think that's because it's no longer a news story and it's no longer something that we're interested in. And as a result, it's become out of sight and out of mind. However, it's not out of sight or out of mind for many people who are living it daily. In order to understand what's happening with the Syrian refugee crisis currently, we have to look at how it all started. In the article, How to Understand This War in Syria, which was published in 2018, we see that the Arab Spring, which began in Libya in 2010, is what would ultimately lead to the Syrian civil war. The Syrian civil war is what would cause the Syrian refugee crisis. The Arab Spring led to an onset of uprisings across the Middle East, and one of these uprisings would involve teenagers in Syria. The government in Syria would respond brutally, and these Syrian teenagers would be arrested and later killed for the uprising that they caused. As a result of the killing of these teenagers, many began to protest against the government and their response. And this gave us the two sides that we see in the Syrian civil war. We see the regime, which is Bashar al-Assad, who is the president, and his supporters, including Russia, Shiite militias, and Iran. And then we see the rebels who are protesting Bashar al-Assad's presidency. And these are both internal rebel groups, and Saudi Arabia, the US and France are backing them. However, just to add to the mix, we also have seen that there have been internal militias that have also caused violence in the area, and that is militias such as ISIS. An article that is titled A Tragedy Without End, which was published in 2016, tells us that there are many things that Syrians have done since the crisis in order to stay safe. According to this article, 5 million people fled to neighboring countries or to Europe during this time. The people who fled to these neighboring countries have not been allowed to integrate into society, and many of them are living in refugee camps. They're not allowed to get jobs, the children are not getting an education, and they're just sitting, waiting, hoping that maybe one day they'll be able to go back to their home country, or maybe one day they'll be integrated into society in their host country. However, another 7.5 million people have been internally displaced in Syria. What does it mean to be internally displaced? Well, many of the Syrian cities have been bombed. Their homes have been destroyed, hospitals have been destroyed, workplaces have been destroyed. And so many of these people have had to flee their homes. However, they have such a great love for their country that they don't want to leave their country. They don't want to give up on it. And so they don't leave Syria completely. They almost become refugees within their own country because they have nowhere to go and they have no way of supporting themselves. These people lack jobs, they lack education, and they are lacking medical care. So the question has become, what will happen in coming days? When will the Syria civil war end? We don't know. However, the question has genuinely become, what will happen to the Syrian refugees who have left their home country? Will they be forced to return, or will they be allowed to integrate into their own society? If they're forced to return, these Syrian refugees are going to be responsible for rebuilding their own society. This means that they will have to start from the ground up, and many of them lack an education, and so it would be very difficult for them to do so and would take a lot of help from the outside. The other option is that they stay in their host countries. However, this would require many host countries to get over their fear of Islamophobia and fear that the Syrians are going to hurt them and allow them to get jobs and allow their children to get educations and move out of the Syrian refugee camps. As we said before, we don't know when the Syrian crisis would end. We didn't expect it to last 10 years when it began. However, until it ends, we must continue to support refugees and stay knowledgeable in the lives that they're facing and the war that's affecting their home tragically. Syria is a beautiful country, and I can say that firsthand, and the war that's taking place is one that is causing utter destruction, and the country is never going to be the same. However, the people are the best, and I say that because some of them are my best friends, and we deserve and they deserve it from us that we stay knowledgeable in this area. And that is why I wanted to speak today about the Syrian refugee crisis, because I feel as if the media has stopped covering it and people have stopped caring. And I want to continue to be an advocate for Syrian refugees across the country, across the world. And here is mine. This is my first knit card, and then this is my second one.